All right. Hello. Welcome to my new podcast. I'm super excited today because I get to talk to another 1-3 mental projector. And my my whole my whole thing is to help people understand themselves more and help navigate life more. And knowing I was a mental projector changed my life. And so meeting other mental projectors, it's just like this deep knowing immediately. And with since we're both 1-3s, I mean, we've been talking for 5 minutes and we've already dug in deep. So I just want to warn y'all, get ready. It's going to get deep real quick. But everybody say hello to Bridget.
Hello.
Thank you, Bridget, so much for being on here with me. So you and I met on Instagram, like you popped in my DMs and I was so excited because instantly, like seriously, as soon as someone says they're a mental projector, I'm like, okay, I already love you. Let's talk. And and we just started chatting about all kinds of things. Um, yeah. So one thing that came out to me is like we were talking about this awakening that happened for us. And so tell me about yours. Like what brought you to human design? What was this awakening? What was your experience? Let's just dig right in.
Great. Well, we have a common jumping off point for I call it my awareness journey,
Mhm.
um, which is Eckhart Tolle. And the way that I found him was I was listening to Gwyneth Paltrow's first Goop podcast, and Oprah was her guest. And Oprah said that everyone should read The Power of Now. And I thought, I wonder why she said that. Like, I wonder, again, it's that like, it lingered with me.
Um,
Or, Lacey Phillips would call it a ping. It was like, huh. So I was a prolific reader because I took the train to work. So I would read a lot. And so I just added it to my library book of lists and got the New Earth. And I was very intrigued. So then I got The Power of Now, which completely transformed my life. It was like this manual of the human experience.
mm,
And it changed everything. It changed my whole life. So Eckhart is responsible for my initial awareness process. And so I spent about a year practicing The Power of Now, immersing myself in him, in the pain body, in the active listening, in the beingness, in the we are spiritual being who have a human experience. Like, what if that were true? I went through this whole process with him of like he said these things and it's very confrontational, right? Because when you read The Power of Now, what you realize is that you never live in the present moment. And so you have to like have this whole reckoning with yourself. So about a year into it, I then discovered Lacey Phillips' work to be magnetic,
mhm.
which I wasn't a meditator and I wasn't familiar with shadow work. So I sort of just jumped right in. And it was really profound, piling or adding on to the present moment living. Then I started meditating and trying to figure out why I was the way I was and learning about like why I have my pain body, you know what I mean? Kind of like merging something else into this present moment living. And she talks about human design from the standpoint of manifestation. And I
Mhm.
always say, I know there's a lot of sort of energy around the variables. Like people have different opinions but it was from the variables that I discovered human design. And I got my first reading, and the girl was a generator, and she said, "Oh, you're a mental projector," and it was very white. And I remember just thinking, like, "Holy shit!" Like we just like got started into something totally new. Like you thought the present moment was hard. Wait until this. But what I will say is that when you're ready, the teacher will appear. And
Um,
I think that initial awareness that Eckhart gave me then opened me up to all of these other things, one of them being human design, which for me, along with The Power of Now, is the most supportive tool that I have discovered during this whole journey.
Same. Yes. And if I'm looking down, I'm just referencing your chart every now and
Yeah.
then because um yes, it's funny, it's this so similar because I read The New Earth first as well, and then The Power of Now, and it changed so much. It was amazing. And I did Lacey Phillips' work as well. And
Here we are.
And now, yes, digging
We
in.
found each other.
So it's so fun.
So did you discover human design? How did you discover human design, if I may ask?
I was cruising through podcasts, of course, one line, like 11 podcasts, right? And I believe it was almost 30. They had Erin Claire Jones on, and it said something about human design. And at first I was like, this is dumb. Like this, I don't understand the system. And it was just from looking at the title of it. I immediately dismissed it. But then something in me was like, no, go listen to it. And so I came back and listened to it, and then immediately fell down the rabbit hole and looked up Erin Claire Jones. And the reason I can't remember exactly if it was almost 30, because then I just started listening to any podcast with Erin Claire Jones, and she's done a lot. And so then it just kind of spiraled from there. I found, like, who did my first reading? I think it was Rose, who will be on the podcast as well. And she's actually a reader in New Zealand, and she's also a mental projector. So I really enjoyed having my chart read from her, because I got that mental projector perspective as well.
I
And
had her read my chart too.
oh, really? Oh my gosh, we've just been following each other.
We're in like different timelines, but we're like
like circling around each other. Oh, this is why I love this stuff and the internet and all of this, because I mean, how cool, how fun. And then I can't even remember. I've just been reading and diving in ever since. It's been about 2.5 years. And yeah, I've met so many people, and I'm all self-studied, which feels really correct for me. Like my one line feels really happy. My fear motivation technically wants to take all of the classes from everybody, like at the same time. So I can't do that, obviously. But when I am able to dig into the information at the time it feels correct for me, then I can really integrate it so much more quickly.
and I am self-studied also. And I think what that allows is for a deconditioning process, right? So I feel like because we're so open, we're so plugged into the external validation. Like, what do other people believe is true? Like, we look to other people to tell us if what we believe to be true is correct. But when you get into human design, there's a lot of stuff that you can choose to believe that a lot of people would think was crazy and weird, and they wouldn't even have any space for it. And so I think that's also that it gives you the experiment of, like, what do you want to believe to be true? You know what I mean? How do you want to feel in your life? Because human design can be very supportive, but it's like, not for, my experience is like, no one around me is doing human design. You know what I mean? Like, my husband doesn't care. My kids make fun of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, but I don't care. I'm like, you guys can laugh and laugh and laugh. I don't need you to validate me. But I think that's also part of this. It can be part of that experience as the very open creatures that we are.
Yes, absolutely. It really hit me when you were talking about the external validation, because that was my life beforehand. I was always looking to somebody else because I didn't understand how to make decisions for myself. And of course, knowing what I know now, it's like, oh, I'm just reflecting everything, and not really reflecting, absorbing more. So
And
did you, yeah. And so it, like, instantly, the more I learn, the more I heal, and the more I'm able to just be myself, and that's where the magic happens, and it's amazing. So did you have that experience too, like pre-human design? Were you looking outside for validation, or did you feel like you were fairly intuitive at all, or like how did you feel about all of that before?
it's interesting. I describe myself as a recovering codependent people pleaser. But what I also can see now is that so much of the turbulence in my life was because I would know things. I would feel like it's almost like by my design, I was so tuned into my environment that I was like reflecting all of these things back to the people. They didn't want to hear it.
Right.
So for me, it was, I think I always kind of had, I was definitely a people pleaser. I was definitely codependent. And I was also always sort of like I was always a little bit connected to my higher self. Like I can have moments even when I was my most unconscious that like she would pop in. I would think, it's almost like I would describe it like the line of people pleasing and the line of codependence. It's like everybody has their line. Like with my children, I always say to them, my line is when you speak to me disrespectfully, like I have no way of being nice to you when that happens. That is my line. Like I try not to yell. I try not to, nag and badger, but I'm just like, that's my line. And I think that, so I was absolutely like looking for the external validation, and then also sort of like, this can't be right. Do you know what I mean? Like I sort of knew there was something off. So I'm
Yes,
grateful for
I
that.
totally relate to that because I've always been very spiritual. I was actually super Christian when I was younger, and then there was a whole transition thing, but I've never let go of the spirituality aspect and just this connection to that, but then feeling completely lost in my body. And like you said, being able to see things and understand like this isn't really right, or this isn't the most efficient way, or, think with relationships too. I've always been like, we really need to tweak this thing, but not everybody not everybody has to hear it, like you said, because we're the most projectoriest of projectors. So if you're not ready to hear it, then it's not going to go well. And of course, I didn't understand the recognition invitation. I was constantly seeking some kind of affirmation of my worth. That undefined heart was ruling everything.
I have a completely open heart, and it was a very, I like to look at it in terms of different like aspects of my life before I understood what was happening. And I look at when I was working in corporate America, and I can laugh and hold so much space for her now, but Jesus, she was on a fast track to not self bitterness, like just a hole that I'm just so glad. Again, Eckhart was like, bing, like all we have is the present moment. And I was like, what do you mean all we have is the present moment? We have all of this time and all of this stuff that happened, it's going to happen, and isn't it so scary? So anyway, I went off there tangent a little bit.
Yes. Yes. It's all perfect. It's all perfect because it took me a while to get into corporate America, and until then I really felt like I was less of a human, like I wasn't an adult because I hadn't had a corporate job.
Mhm.
And I mean, I was 33 when I got my first like real job. I had already been married, had 2 kids, and been divorced, and then I got a job. And so I went into it thinking, okay, well, now I can be an adult and I can take care of my family, and I've got it settled. Very quickly realized I hate it here. And like you said, with that present moment, that now moment, it's so hard to do that. Um, it's so hard to do that in life in general. But I'm curious because you were talking about the anxiety and the especially thinking about the future, like we've got this stuff in the past, we've got this stuff in the future, and you have defined crown and mind. And so usually if somebody's undefined crown and mind, then I would imagine there's a lot of anxiety happening in there because there's extra pressure. But with yours defined, um, how did that transition for you? Like, did you feel like you were very anxious before? Did knowing the definition help you? Like, tell me about that.
I wouldn't have identified as anxious, so that's why like I didn't feel like I was breaking apart at the seams. There are people who are sort of having this moment of like, oh my gosh. I think that Eckhart got to me right before that happened, I would say. So my experience was I was able to maintain a lot in my mind. So I can think about a lot. I can handle a lot of mental activity,
Mhm.
so it didn't necessarily translate into like that acute anxiety. Um,
Okay.
but I think where a lot of my frustration came from with my defined head, ajna, and throat is that like I can know a lot of things for other people. I can't know them for myself. And so all of my knowings in my head, head, ajna, throat, it's like, it's really not about me. And I think I lived in a space for a long time where I sort of felt like I understood everybody else and I could see how things needed to shift for them, whether I said it to them or not. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, so why don't you do that for yourself? Like, why don't you figure it out for yourself? And that's where I think I spent a lot of time spinning my wheels on like the not self of the head, like, thinking about things that aren't worth thinking about. I thought everything was worth thinking about.
Oh, yes. Yes. Um, so I'm curious, since you've learned about being a mental projector, do you ever still get bitter about it? Because sometimes I'll promise you the whole one reason I found Janelle's podcast in the first place is because I was like deep in this spiral of bitterness and I was so frustrated because I'm like, why do you tell me I can't make decisions from my mind? Like my mind is not for me, it's for other people, but then all I have access to is my mind and I'm so confused. And, and I was just like having this moment and I looked up Mental Projector on Spotify and that's how I found it. And so I still have moments, I guess is all I'm saying, where I get kind of frustrated and finding a sounding board. Have you experienced that since learning human design, or has
Oh yeah.
it? Yeah, you still get bitter.
I think that it helps me. What I've noticed is that it allows me to get out of it faster.
Yeah.
So it's almost like when I first started to notice it, I would, you linger in things. We have patterns that we live in. And everything's about breaking those patterns. And so I think it helped me I come out of it faster. I'm able to say in the moments where I am in my, my fortress of solitude, like everything has happened exactly as it's supposed to be happening. Like nothing has gone wrong. You know what I mean? All is well. Like I can kind of say those things when I'm in my fortress of solitude and just be like, I don't know if it's true, but I'm just going to say them anyway type thing. And then, then like magic, it's like, 2 hours later, I feel better. So it's that surrender to like, kind of works, not sure. It's like the experimentation of it all.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that because that's almost word for word what I say to myself as well. So so funny how all these similarities. Because yeah, I would get so worked up on stuff and I repeat that to myself, like everything is exactly how it needs to be. I am exactly where I need to be. And it calms me so much because it gets me more in the present, right? Because yeah, I'll get just all the not self. I swear, sometimes all 7 voices yell at me at the same time. I'm like, yeah, just calm down. I need to switch gears here.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the tricks is to get familiar with the voices. Who are the voices in your head, which I would say I've gotten much more in touch with when my shadow is taken over. You know what I mean? She wants to spin at the wheel, and ego, and just all the different parts of ourselves that we are. You know what I mean? We're not one thing.
We're not. And I always tell my people it's all about grace and forgiveness as well. Because when you look at the shadow aspects, I love knowing the shadow aspects. It helps me see that it's not a bad thing. I don't believe in good or bad. It's just there's efficient, there's not efficient, there's going in the right direction, there's not going in the right direction. And right meaning for you. And it just helps me see that. So yeah, the same thing where it's like I'll hear or I'll notice myself doing something out of fear of confrontation. Like, well, I just won't say this thing because I don't want to make them mad. Okay, well, now I know where that's coming from. And then I can check in. Like, is it really about that? Or am I just not actually invited to share this? Am I invited to share it, but I'm scared? Like, let's feel out what's actually happening here. And yeah, it helps to navigate things so much better.
And I think as ones, so we're ones and we're mental projectors. We're projectors, so we're about the other. We're ones, so investigators. We're two projectors, which we're interested in the other, and then 3 we're mental projectors. So we're so open. And I think that we get to, it's like we get to learn through ourselves what all the not self, all of the ways that we can not show up for ourselves, and then we identify it. Like for me, what I do is I then can identify that so easily in other people. It's like so obvious to me. And then it's just like a shifting. It's like, isn't it so interesting that you do that? Isn't it so interesting that you say that? As opposed to, like you said, there is no good and bad. It's like it just is.
Right. And look, this is a thing that's happening. Let's explore it, which not everybody wants to. But this
Not
leads
everybody
me,
wants to.
yeah. Yeah, I learned that one. And that's one that's followed me a lot. And so I think that's part of why it's taken a while for me to really find my voice.
And the 3 line.
Yeah, and then that lovely 3 line. But this reminds me of your purpose statement that you say on your website, which kind of blew me away because you said, "My purpose in life is to teach you how to manage your mind and manage your energy so you feel better." And then I love this. It said, "I have a 100% efficacy rate." Like, yes, get it. That's some open heart wisdom right there. Like, this is what's happening.
Yes,
So,
I've added that for all of the like generator sacral beings that want, they want like proof. I think sometimes people want to feel like they're getting something out of it. And so that is not, that felt, as you can imagine, as I typed that on there, I was like, I hope, I believe in myself, but it's not something I would necessarily lead with, but you got.
yes. You do, yes. So I love that you owned that. So I'm glad you kind of shared that vulnerable moment there. Like it was difficult to type out.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Um, and I think that so in terms of our awareness journey, so Eckhart gets you in touch with the present moment, which becomes really it's what are you thinking? You know what I mean? Your thoughts create your reality. And then to learn about human design and have it be, we have so much thoughts, you know what I mean? Like our minds are so strong, and all of the openness creates, all of these patterns that didn't serve me. I'll speak for me. I created this whole life based on what other people told me was real and was supposed to be true, was supposed to feel good for me. And so that is what, because I have done this for myself, because I have learned to manage my mind and manage my energy, nothing else outside of me has changed. Like I have a long laundry list of things that would be put in like the bad category of things happening. And yet I feel better than I ever have. So that's what I want other people to understand, and not to understand, that's very bossy, is to like, what if that were true? Doesn't that feel good?
Yes. Yes. And that's what I love about when you ask that question and the way that you approach the system, because there can be some cultish aspects to it, right? Which I believe for anything, you can turn anything into a cult.
Mm-hmm.
And for you and the way you approach it, the way you talk about it, it's not like, here, do this thing because it's real and it's true and this is what you need to change your life. It's like, you know what, this has helped me and it's a cool perspective, so let's just try it. Like, what if this was true for you? What if this helped you feel better?
Mm-hmm.
What if this worked for you? I really
Yeah.
like that.
And when people, and the thing about what you and I do is like, I want to show up in service to other people. That is why I am here, is to help other people feel better. Which I've been doing my whole life. I'm sure you have felt how you can like make people, like just being around them and talking to them and listening to them, how you impact them. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I just lost it again. I'm sorry, my brain just went eek.
That's okay. So just talking about how you help people feel better and manage their thoughts and manage their energy, and because you've used your experience.
Right. So we teach what we most need to learn, and I think that what you and I can both feel is the other, so so acutely. And the gift of the projector is to manage energy. And so I think that my gift is, I can, if someone invites me into their weird little world and lets me like get all in there. I was like, we're going to get all in your head. We're going to take all the thoughts out. We're going to look at all of them, because to me, that's the most interesting part of the other person. Like, what is it that you think? Like, what is it that you believe? And then gently say, these are some of the things that I see, that like, it's just patterns. It's just like, it's language that you use. It's the way that you open your sentences. It's the, I have a friend who I love so much. And she's always caveating before she says something. She's always saying, you probably already heard of this before, and I say to her, you don't need to do that. And you keep saying this word over and over. And I think it is my most favorite word, and that is efficiency. When you are caveating, it's almost like an inefficiency because it's unnecessary.
Mhm.
For like in my experience of it, it's just like, why are you doing that? It's, you can feel how it's like, people that say they're sorry all the time, or people who complain all the time. You know what I mean? I just see these like little things, and people don't see it. People, they can't see it. And then they're like, oh, I didn't know I did that. And it's very small. But of course, that requires a vulnerability to say, like, I'm going to tell you all my stuff and then listen to what you have to say. But the way I do it is always with unconditional love, which I think mental projectors really want to give to other people, because for me, the definition of unconditional love is that people don't need to be different in order for me to love them.
Mhm.
And I think that as somebody who felt like I needed to be a certain way for a really long time in order to be loved, it's like that is always my intention with every human interaction.
Yes. Yes, same. It is so beautiful because, and I think because we have so much openness, and with our three lines, like, we've
Mhm.
experienced so many things and just really gotten into the mud of so many things. So there's just a lot of grace that comes with that, and a lot of understanding. And I can't, there's so many times a client will tell me something and they're like so terrified to tell me. And they're like, oh my gosh, I never told anybody. Do you think I'm a horrible person? I'm like, no. Like, I've literally done that, but I had to do it like 4 times to learn the lesson. So you're ahead of me. Let's talk about it. And really, it's just that the thing that I love is too is with all our perspective and everything that we have. And I don't know if you did this, but it's one line fear, right, of not knowing enough. And when I
Mhm.
first started doing life coaching stuff, like, I've wanted to do life coaching or like teaching of some sort for years, but didn't feel like I knew enough, or, I didn't have the right qualifications. And then finally it was like, oh no, I just need to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of the person, or even 10 or 20, but really just a couple steps. And
Mhm.
then I got this visual of like being on a hike, and I just literally need to turn around and be like, hey, there's a rock right here. Just want you to know. It just helping to navigate different things so that that person doesn't fall, because I literally just tripped on it. And
And
it's,
you can see it in them.
yeah, yeah. And so the something that's so fascinating talking to you is how you do pick up on these little things so easily, and how beneficial and helpful that is. I do imagine that might have been difficult growing up. Like you said, not everybody wants to hear it, and it's a vulnerable thing.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that my memory of my childhood, like how I would describe it, would be that I was difficult as a young child, like as a baby and as a toddler. Like they would be like, oh, you're very headstrong. And they would tell me stories about how I wouldn't want to get in the stroller. So they would like, like muscle me into the stroller. This is like the 70s. And then I think it took me a while to, I think that's part of my openness, right? I was like experiencing everything around me. I didn't know what to do with it. No one around, I didn't even have any language around it. And then I think I became good at just being like small and silent in some ways when I needed to be,
Yes.
but always observing. So even though I have spent many more of my life conditioned than deconditioned, what I know is I have a treasure trove of back data that I can go to and say, like when I was going through inner child and money, all the things on the To Be Magnetic program, it was almost like it was an efficiency, like this process of like your shadowy parts, you know what I mean? Like, why do you, I could put all the pieces together. Like, did you, in all of the times where you felt really bitter in your life, in your corporate career, where you felt the most like you were going to, scream from the rooftops, were you invited?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
the
It's
answer
a
was
huge
no.
thing. Yeah.
I wasn't invited. So it allows me to like release that. Do you know what I mean? Like I could go back in time and be like, because I think again, we're so sensitive as mental projectors, you know what I mean? So it's like, and it just allowed me to efficiently be like, is that mine? No. Is that mine? No. Is that mine? No. And I mean, most of it wasn't even mine.
Right. But you were carrying it.
Really good too, making it look easy.
You're like, I got it. I'll just put it in my backpack with everybody else's stuff.
Right. But what's funny is that so when I was trying to figure out how to pivot from corporate America, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I needed to get the hell out. So I
Mhm.
started thinking about what I was good at and what like I naturally did. You know, they say if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And I was like, well, I do like talking to people about their lives, which isn't like, you know, really all that interesting. But I did know that I was interested in other people more than they were interested in me, that like my interest in other human beings is deeper than the regular standard human being. Right.
Mhm.
And that's the, I guess, like the projector, you know, the G center, like zzz, right in there. Um, and then I would think, well, what would people tell me that I should be? And people would tell me all the time, you should be a therapist, you should be a psychiatrist or whatever. And I remember every time people would say that to me, I would say, I wouldn't mind doing that, but I wouldn't like people coming in and talking about the same stuff over and over and over. Like my understanding of therapy was it's like, it was sort of the action was them talking about it, but there was no like communication about like future, you know, how do you want, it's like how you feel now and why you feel that way, but no focus on like, well, how do you want to feel? And so when I discovered life coaching, I was like, oh my God, you mean people tell me all of their stuff and I get to support them. Like I love listening to people. Like you said, there's nothing you could say that would make me judge you or just, I'm always like fascinated, like from a place of unconditional love. But then you also get to say, okay, like that happened, that's real for you. Like, you know, I get it. Like I totally understand why you feel the way you feel and why you believe what you believe. Then it becomes a question of like, do you want to keep that?
Right.
And then
Right.
guiding people through that process. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So
It's
fun.
funny 'cause I've done therapy off and on over the years. And looking back now, I realize I was just looking for a soundboard. And it's
Hmm.
so funny because I would get there and after a couple sessions, I remember being so fascinated because I could feel my words leaving my mouth and then almost bouncing off the therapist and back into my system. And then it's like I was therapizing myself. And every single time there was a point where the therapist would start talking about their stuff. And then I would almost turn into the therapist. And that's when I knew it was time to leave. Like, I'm not going to pay you for this. And, but now looking back, it was so fascinating to me. Like, okay, I was just soundboarding and I was able to do it in that space. That environmental part is so fascinating to me. But you're right. There was never that much talk of let's move forward or like, okay, here's what's happening. Here's ways you can move through it. It's just all talk therapy, in my experience. And I mean, if I wasn't so aware, it would have kept me very stuck in bitterness for a long time. So I love that you're able to do that and help people move through. That's one of my favorite things too, is these aha moments of people. And it's almost like you said before, like we're just cleaning out. I imagine a closet, like our brain is a closet or like a big filing cabinet. Like we're just going in and it's fine that the person doesn't see it because they're used to that pile. We all do this. We started a pile thinking we'll take care of it later, and then we don't, and then 5 years goes by and we're just used to seeing it. We forget it's there.
Hmm.
You just need someone else to come in and point at it and help clear it out.
Yeah. Which you and I can do beautifully, but we need to be invited. And that's really the thing that I'm working on. It's like, how do I create, you know, how do I allow more invitations is one of the things that I'm like thinking about,
Yeah.
because I think that's the key for us.
So let's unpack that a bit. Like, how have you experienced invitation in your life? What's been the key to help you understand the invitation process? Because I think let me just clarify, because I think a lot of projectors, I know I get questions on TikTok and then just seeing people on Instagram, with my observations, there's this thinking of, well, we just got to wait around because it's wait for the invitation and we got to wait for somebody else to recognize us before we can do stuff. And the more I learn, the more I see that's not what it is. But so I'm curious how you've experienced the whole invitation aspect.
I'm still working on, I'm still formulating my opinions on invitations. right now, my thoughts on it are that we need to make ourselves available.
Mhm.
So there has to be a visibility around what we offer, our services. So I have that visibility. You have much more. You're very active on Instagram. That's how I found you, which I'm so thrilled. But I think it's sort of, I think I tell myself that's what we can do in order, like I must feel like we're like putting ourselves in the window, like we're here, you know what I mean? Like, look at us. But from there, there's not really much that then from there, people have to invite us in. That's from the business point of view. From my life experience, I would say that one of the most clarifying understandings I've had is that everything is energy.
Mhm.
And I kind of came to that late. I heard it and everything, but I was Roman Catholic school. I had like my own way of navigating the world. I prayed. I believe. I had a faith in something beyond myself, which I think is important. So when I learned that everything was energy, I'm telling you, it was like all the pieces like came into like clear to me, and it was this understanding that all of my knowings that I would know I would tell myself, oh, I know it because, and I would try to apply it to my reality, what I could see with my eyes. Oh, I noticed this because she said this. Like, and really, a lot of it's kind of in my head. I'm not sharing this with other people, but I'm like, oh, so-and-so doesn't look good today. So-and-so looks stressed. I wonder if she's okay. And I would say, and I might mention it to my roommate later, and she'd be like, well, why do you say that? And I would say, oh, well, she looked like she was a little bit hunched over. Like I would try to apply it to something that I could like explain. And I think that it was really reading the energy, is understanding the energy of people and the energy of people, places, and things. And so for me, when I think about the invitations, I think about them in, yes, like an overt invitation. I would like you to do this. Would you please join me? But then it's also that like energetic invitation, and they run the gamut. I mean, the most hilarious ones are uh, in my memories, being in social events where you connect with the one human being who, I don't like big crowds. I like, even if I'm in a big crowd, I'm doing the one-on-one. So I'm always the person that's like in the corner. But you'll connect to someone and then like you're like, okay, bye, it's time to move on to another G center, and the person starts like following you around, you know what I mean? And not because they want to like make out with you, but because they love how they feel when
Yeah.
you're talking to them. They love it. So that's the most extreme version, but I can look back on them now and see those invitations, and those are interesting because you're so invited, but it's almost like you're like, you know what I mean? Like then it becomes like, is the invitation good for you?
Yes. Yes. That's
What
the
was your experience?
that one was an interesting one for me to unpack, really, and to look back, like you were saying before, to look back in these experiences and realize, oh, I wasn't actually invited, or like I was so thirsty for recognition inside of this relationship or that experience.
Please, I know all these things.
And it's like, maybe if I dance this way, then they'll see me that. And then, or maybe if I just rearrange my words just right, then they'll notice what's happening here. And it's
Yes.
exhausting. And so that's what really hit me, is like the invitation is also to protect me, because I don't have the energy to convince you of anything. I also, even if it was aligned, I don't have the energy to help everybody on the planet. I'm not meant to help everybody on the planet. So the invitation helps me connect to the correct people for me and the people that actually need my version of the world. And then that helped release so much from me. And then if somebody doesn't connect with me or doesn't invite me, I don't take it personally, and I can just love on them. Like, okay, cool. You'll find your person, you'll find your guide, or maybe you'll come back. I don't know, but I can love them where they are and not make it mean anything about me. And I realized too, a big switch for me was that the internal recognition has to happen first,
Mhm.
and recognizing that I do have a perspective to share. And that's literally why I'm here, is to share this perspective, because I've been so scared for so long because it got me in trouble before. And I didn't want to make anybody mad or anything, right? I don't want to end up alone and just all the undefined stuff. And so recognizing that that's what I'm here for and that the people that need it will find it and come to me switched so much. Have you ever heard the lighthouse analogy for projectors?
Mhm.
That's my favorite visual because the lighthouse stands tall and strong and shines bright and doesn't move. It's like, here's where I am. Come find me if you need me. And if not, if you're going somewhere else, then, you know, drive safe. And that helps me so much. Like, I'm not going to apologize for how I am. And if I don't have anything to prove to you, you either come or you don't.
Mhm.
So,
I feel as if human design has allowed me to depersonalize so much of my external reality
oh
and
my,
to allow myself to let that be, and that's okay. Doesn't need to be different. But then applying that same formula to myself, like, I am okay. And
mhm.
I also don't need to be different. And that creates major energetic shifts in, in your person.
Major. Because, yes, I remember as a kid just trying to sort out what normal was, because everybody's talking about it. And of course, I'm in school, like observing everything and realizing the teacher gets mad at the kids. Like they're constantly saying, sit down and be quiet. So I sat down and I was quiet.
Mhm.
And, just all this. And I kept thinking there was this normal. And so then to release that, and now it's like I had this vision, like this kid vision of like, there's this circle and there's normal, right? And then there's outside of it, the people that are not normal. And most people are in the circle, and some people who are unfortunate got the bad end of the stick and short end of the stick and they're outside of it. But now I'm like, oh no, it's just a human spectrum. Like everybody's on the same line. We're just on different parts of the line. Everything is a spectrum. That's how I see it now. And it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Everything you think is a weakness. I was talking to a client earlier today. I was doing a reading, and she mentioned something about ADHD, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, blah blah," and she's a Manny Gen, and I'm like, "Okay, let's talk about this." And then we go through her chart and her strengths and everything, and her not self voices, and it was all coming together. So I think labels are important in a way because it gives you language for something specific. It helps you navigate a certain situation. I have a degree in communication, so I love words and communication. But if you're using it as a limiting behavior, if you're putting yourself in a box with your words or acting like you can't do something because of something, then that's where it becomes problematic, I think.
I love words too. It is like when you find the perfect word, don't you feel like it's the perfect word? It describes it perfectly. And I think that's, again, an efficiency in words. Like, this is the word. This is the word. Because that's all we have to communicate is, our word, our language.
Yes,
Um,
yes. Well, language and energy, the energetics of life have been so fascinating to observe as well. But this is making me think of the idea of surrender, because Ra always talks about surrendering to the experiment, surrender to your strategy and authority. And then that's when things align. It's like nobody's really here to do in a way. It's like we're all surrendering. And then inside of that surrender is the doing, and that's how we create. How do you feel about this whole surrender idea?
I am about 4 years into surrender. So I feel like it's endless. I will tell you that. I'm sure you know. So that's one of the defeating parts of it, I think, is when, like, we think of it as, oh, well, I'll surrender this and then it will kind of go away. And
Mm,
I'm getting better with the understanding that the human experience is all of it, right? It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And allowing for the negative emotions as much as I allow for the positive emotions, which I think is something that open people struggle with. You know what I mean? It's like there's just so much there to unwind. You know what I mean? To look at. Like, I think again, the first part of my life was the experiment, and now the second part of my life is my new experiment. But then also, like, dissecting those unconscious years. And that's really helpful. But I would say me and surrender are on good terms.
I like it. Yes. That was another idea that really helped me, and that just made sense to me. Because so about 12 years ago, I was visiting my aunt, and she's amazing. She can analyze handwriting and basically
Mhm.
tell you absolutely everything about yourself based on your handwriting. And this was right at the beginning of my separation from my kid's dad. And I didn't realize how much of a mess I was. I was like putting on a brave face, you know? And she, in like 30 seconds of just looking at my handwriting, she's like, yeah, you need to let it go. Like, you're backed yourself in a corner. You're pushing everybody away, convincing everybody you're fine, but you're not. And she didn't know anything that was going on. This is just off my handwriting. And so I cried for like 3 days after, because someone finally noticed how bad I was, how
Recognize
not
you.
okay I was. Yeah. And she looked at me and she said, um, she's like, you just got to learn to let it flow. And I was like, I don't understand what that means.
Come again.
And she's like, just let it flow. She's like in her 60s at this time, and she's just this sage woman. And she's like, just let life flow. And I was like, I could not get it. It took me so long, because I was trying to control everything, because everything was falling apart. I thought if I just controlled it all, it would all stay together and it'd be fine. And so the surrender experiment has been in my field for a while. And so seeing it somewhere else, but then having the structure inside of human design to understand a little more of what I was surrendering to,
Hmm.
and seeing the strengths in my chart. I always feel like it's surrendering to the gifts, to the definition in my chart. Because another thing, I always talked about how I wish I could just be a professor. Well, then let's look at my chart. I just crack up, because I've got the one line. I have the fear motivation, which is all about learning and foundation. My sun gate is gate 47, which is just taking in information, transforming it. And then I'm a mental projector, for Pete's sake. Like, oh,
And
that's
you
why.
have a defined growth.
Yes, yes. I've got that 1156. I've got that storytelling. Like, I feel like I get the image of like it, an inspiration little rough nugget pops in my undefined crown, and then it goes through gate 47 and rolls around in the defined ajna, becomes a shiny little golden nugget, and then it comes out of my channel, out of my throat, and then I share it with the world. I'm like, okay, now I get it. That's why I want to be a professor, because that's literally what I'm here to do. Like, I'm just here to transfer information. Okay, and then I can surrender to that and be okay with that, instead of being scared that people are going to be mad that I'm talking.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
been
comforting, and it's sort of, I think human design helps you remember who you are. And
Mhm.
you already knew that you enjoyed, that you wanted to be a professor, that there was a part of you like, why do you want to be a professor? You don't know, but that's what you think. And then you come to understand why. It's kind of like it's that validation, which for some reason we really want. But human design allows for internal validation.
Yes, yes, which is huge, and that's the energy shift, like you said before. That's when things get good, when you can start attracting things and creating inside of that, because you have that internal validation. And that's the other thing my aunt said to me all those years ago, and she still says to me. She's like, you have everything you need inside of you already. You don't need to look outside of yourself. And I couldn't understand that back then.
Mhm.
And now that's one thing I say to basically everybody that hires me. Like, I'm just here to get you back to your own heart. Like,
Mhm.
because you have everything. You already know the answers to these questions.
Mhm.
I'm just here to guide you back to that place.
Mhm.
That's my main goal.
And what I like about both of your quotes from your aunt is that your aunt has said a lot of things to you, I'm sure, over the years. And yet these sentiments settled with you. And even at the time, you were kind of like, I don't know what you know what I mean? Like, I just got to flow. I just got to flow. That doesn't, what does that even look like? What does that even mean? And I think it's the perfect example of how people can go from, there's like, they hear something and they're like, well, that sounds interesting. That sounds like it could be, what if that were true, and moving through that process and then getting to the embodiment stage where you now do understand that all you have to do is flow, and you do understand that you have everything inside of you. Does that mean that your life is perfect and everything goes smoothly and everything's great? No, it doesn't mean that at all. But at least you have it's like information inside of you to support yourself.
Yes. Yes. I often wonder, I always wish I could bring my 20-year-old self to like experience this reality. She'd be freaked out. Like, I don't understand. But it's so fascinating. Yes, because yeah, I'm just too many words. My life right now, like there's so many things where I'm like, I thought I would be here. I thought I'd be in this place, or I thought I'd have these things in place by now. And I don't. Whereas before that would have really crushed me. And now I'm like, well, I mean, I'm a little annoyed by it, but it's just, here's where I am. And I'm not as scared at
Mhm.
all. I used to be so scared of everything. And now it's trusting in that flow and trusting in the energetic resources. And the more I show up authentically, I mean, that's when things move. Like TikTok, it's crazy. I had like just November and December were very, very bad months. Like I was low, very low. I just couldn't do anything. And then I started turning it around. Anyway, so I just started showing up again. And I did this energy clearing thing with somebody. And like the next day, I woke up and I had a couple hundred new followers. And then it just started going and going and going. Like I went from 1,700 followers to 7,000 in like 2 weeks. Yeah. So I was like,
Well,
okay, energy's real. Let's ride the wave.
you did something different. So what you described to me in your process when you said, I'm not where I think I should be, I don't have the things in place that I thought I would have, and you're like, and I don't like beat myself up about it. And what struck me is that you changed, everything comes down to what we make things mean. And
Mhm.
you changed what you made it mean. You changed the fact that don't have, insert things here, life plan here. You maybe before would have made it mean that you were behind or you were a failure, or like a way to be mean to ourselves. Boom, boom, something's wrong with you, something's wrong with you, something's wrong with you. Why don't you have it? Now you're like, I mean, I would like to have it, but oh well, you know what I mean? Like, and I think there's so many people out there that would object to that mentality. But what you and I both know is that is the way to get what you want.
Yes.
But people don't even know what they want. So that's the other problem.
Yes.
They
Especially
think they know.
moms. Like, sorry, what did you say right there?
I said they think they know. Like they would say, oh, they know what they don't want. Like they know what they don't want, but they don't know what they want.
Hmm. Yeah. Yes. And I know I was there too. Like it seemed like it took a while to allow myself to want what I want. And
Mhm.
then also I've noticed in my work, like moms are the worst on themselves. We just give up so much. And then you ask a mom what she wants. I don't know. Like most moms, my friend and I uh, have a Facebook group for single moms. We're both single moms and we do a podcast and stuff. So we interact with single moms a lot. And it's like we just have to take care of our kids. That's what it seems like. Like that's the story, right? But it's such a big story.
Mm.
So anyway, when you were talking about how people don't know what they want, that's just what pops in my head because I have such a heart for the moms out there who are doing their best but haven't taken the time to love themselves and to really understand what they want as a human. And I just want to hug them, be like, come on, you gotta be a person too.
Mhm.
Mm,
Right, because we can't fill from an empty cup, and it's so cliche, but it's true. It's
yeah.
so true. If you do not love yourself, you cannot love someone else. If you do not laugh at yourself, you can't laugh at other people. Like, it all starts here internally and then moves to the external. And that's why the world is in the state it's in right now, because people are totally unconscious to it. And they think they're just reacting to their world. Well, I'm just reacting to this, and this went wrong, and this went wrong, and then this, and this, and this. And I just listen to them, and I'm like, I just don't say anything, but I think I can tell, if you were my client, what we'd be talking about, you know what I mean? It's that stuck in
Yes.
that story and stuck in that energy. And what's really unfortunate is that there's so much programming, right? So you and I are totally open. And I would say, like, my entire world had to be like rock bottomed in order for me to embrace a way that felt easier, that feels better.
Mm-hmm.
And um oh my gosh, again, I'm so sorry. I lose it because I like go ahead in my brain when I'm talking. Can you just, what was it? What was I going? This is my whole like channel. Anyway, I just think it makes me sad because I can feel it. And I think it's not that big of a shift that you need to make. It's like, be honest with yourself. You don't even have to tell anybody. Just be honest with yourself about what you want and what you don't want. But like, can't you feel that? How people are, so we had to have a rock bottom to show all of our conditioning. So now I see all of it, and I can see in other people, and I have so much heart for the people who are like these moms, the world tells them, this is how you should be. This is what a good mom is. This is how you show up. And so I have so much space in my heart for everyone who is disconnected from themselves, because I totally understand how they got there.
Absolutely. Same.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, there's zero judgment because we do get the message so much. I mean, look at any TV show, there's just all this messaging of how a good mom gives up herself for
Mhm.
her family. And even if they don't say it directly, like that's what happens a lot. The
Mm.
messaging we get in our culture, for sure. And then being a single mom, it seems like it just magnifies that because there's this weird transition, especially if someone was a stay-at-home mom before, their whole identity was being a mom and being able to stay home with their kids and take care of everything, and then transitioning to single working mom. That's so hard and requires such a shift. And then I remember there was a few years where I was a full-time single mom. I was lived in Arkansas with my boys, and their dad had moved away, and my family's in Texas. And I just was like, I really see the value of stay-at-home moms now. Like, I was one, and I was always nervous that I wasn't earning my keep or something, or like doing enough for the family because that was me. Like, I would love so much to have somebody that I love at home taking care of my kids in the morning. Like, I can go to work knowing that my kids are going to wake up and get what they need, and someone's taking them to school, and then someone's going to be there for them when they're home from school, and someone's going to be there to take care of them until I can get home from work. And if there was somebody who was like cooking dinner when I got home, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. And like all the stuff moms do, like,
Mhm.
why do we not take care of them more? I don't know how we got on this tangent, but it's just like, everybody go hug your moms.
Mhm.
And if you are a mom, like, take a moment to really appreciate yourself and acknowledge how much you do, even if nobody else does. You're amazing and you run the world. That's all.
Yeah, and it's an uphill battle for women, single mothers, young women, because everything outside of us tells us how we should be better, what we could be doing more of, how can we look better, how can we smell better, how can we, perform better. I think, and men have a similar, messaging program, but I think women as mothers, we have these little souls that we, grow in our bodies and then release to the world, and you feel, responsible for them.
Yes, yes. That's a whole other interesting thing too. Um, and yeah, I don't want to leave men out because there's certain things I see in men and the languaging and the conditioning that they have to deal with that my heart just goes out so much. And I just want to help in that area too. And especially being a boy mom, I think about it a lot. And I mean, there's just so much we've conditioned every human for, and it's crazy.
Mhm.
It's crazy. So to have a system, I think for me, with human design, it's just really helped give me clarity on how to hack the matrix, I guess, and how to understand my piece in this whole puzzle, and to not take the conditioning so seriously, not take the languaging so seriously. Like I think you had said before, how you start to see things so clearly. Last summer, I took this part-time job doing data entry, basically. And all I could see in this company was like grown men working out of their undefined heart center. Like, it's like, well, I got to do more work to prove my worth, to get more money. And, and then the boss will write, like, okay, well, you only did this, and so did this. And so I'm just saying we need top performers. I'm like, oh my God. Nobody, like, and I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle it. Like, you all, like, can we sit and talk? Because like, can anybody just acknowledge they have a family at home, and that's important too? And like, your business is successful. Think about how much more successful it'd be if everybody was actually happy and healthy. So
Yes.
I didn't last very long.
And it's the efficiencies. So we can, when we are in our environment, we can, however that works for us, you know what I mean? However our energy system works, I think we're looking for efficiencies.
Yeah.
And when you're in an environment for a long time, I worked at one organization for 15 years, it's like all of the inefficiencies were super obvious to me by that time. And I really think if I hadn't discovered human design, although there isn't a timeline where that would happen, but if I want to play make believe, I think I would be just a bitter of the typical corporate bitter projector who's just, no one sees me, no one listens to me, no one cares what I have to say, and I know all of these things. And so the beautiful part for me was when I made the decision to leave corporate America, I gave myself a year to do so I could really get comfortable with it, because it's obviously a big change. And so I got to use my last, my last year there, I guess it was my last 9 months there, is when I discovered human design. And then I really got to experience the environment, understanding now what I understood. And it
Oh,
was like all the things I always knew, right? But I would tell myself I was wrong, because people would be, you know what I mean? I would tell people and they'd be like, no, all of that sort of like weird confusion that happens. And it
yeah.
was like, bing, 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 like everything came online. I would literally anticipate what people were going to say. I felt like I was a magical. I was like, I can see exactly how this is working. And guess what? I don't want to be here anymore. I can't be here anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. It's not for me. And really, I think a lot of places we can see inefficiencies, right? Every place has inefficiencies. I think I always say to people who are coming to me for job advice or career advice, it's like the longer you are at an organization, the harder it is for you to, I think, have grace for the organization, because you're just a little bit tired of it. You know what I mean? And especially when other companies, I love talking to people who have been with a company for 15 years and then the new management comes in and they're like, I think I'm just really gonna try hard to make this work. And I'm always like creating space. Like, of course you're gonna do that. But also remember, like, you are used to it a certain way. And that is not, it's almost like giving people the space to feel the bad feelings, like it does suck sometimes. And I don't know. I think that's important.
It is important. It is. Yeah. Seeing the inefficiencies, it's kind of hard sometimes. So I'm a substitute teacher right now. I used to be a junior high coach, and I've just always kind of hovered around the teacher aspect, right? And so talk about inefficiencies, it gets me going sometimes.
I bet.
Like the whole education system, and then just a lot of stuff. And I'm like, okay. But how do I communicate this, and who do I communicate it to? Oh, it's just so interesting. Okay, so this got me thinking. I'm not sure where I made this connection, but um, as a mental projector, and I know you and I talked about how it's like we want to reach other mental projectors, be like, you're okay, it's okay, own your gifts. And I did a video on TikTok about it, and someone was talking about how their kid is a mental projector and was like asking questions on how to parent them more. And so I'm just curious, like if you could go back, knowing what you know now about human design and about your mental projectorness, for anybody who might have a kid that's a mental projector or love somebody who's a mental projector, like what would you say you needed the most as a kid? What would be like the perfect recipe to support you?
That's a great question. I tell parents of projectors, because I haven't met another mental projector in a child yet, but to like be curious about what your kid is curious about, to almost be curious about who they are as opposed to who you want them to be or who you think they should be. I think as parents, we all have that realization at some point where it's like, we have this vision of how it's, you're going to get married and have kids, and I'm married and have kids, and I have 3 boys and you have two boys,
Two.
2 boys, so boy mom, and it's all going to go this way. And then you sort of realize that they're very separate from you. And I think with the mental projectors, just being that sensitivity, that they might be sensitive to their environment. Their environment might be important. I can remember when I was the youngest, I had 2 older brothers, so I was kind of drug around a little bit, which I don't have any negativity there, other than sometimes we'd be in places and I can remember I wouldn't want to like get out of the car, or I wouldn't want to go into the main room. I wouldn't want to, and that was me being a brat. You know what I mean? That was me being difficult. And in hindsight, I'm like, I was 3 years old. Like, how am I capable of that behavior? Like, but nobody was curious about why I didn't want to go in the room. And I don't know that I would have been able to tell them, you know what I mean? I don't think it was sort of any deficiency on their part, other than we just know so much more now. So I would say be curious about who they are, who they tell you they are, like what you observe in them, how their environment impacts them. Because I think that's probably for me, like I always have to have my environment a certain way. And as a child, I wanted things a certain way, and not like OCD. I mean, I guess maybe a little bit, but like I always just felt better. Like if everything was neat. And I wasn't like, oh my gosh, it needs to be, or something's going to go wrong. It was more like, in order for me, I would, like before I would do my homework, for example, I would straighten my room. Even now, I close the closet door. I make sure the shades look a certain way. And then I'm like, and now I'm ready.
Yeah. Okay, I love that. Just getting curious about the kid and the environment. You're right, that's so huge. Like if they're not comfortable in an environment, it's because they are their environment.
Mm-hmm.
And
do you have examples of that? Can you give me an example of when before you knew you were a mental projector, and like certain environments that maybe you spent a lot of time in, or that you like that just stick out to you in your memory as like, oh, maybe that wasn't the greatest environment, or you know what I mean? Do you have any examples of that?
yeah, it's interesting because looking back, I feel like I wasn't ever in a correct environment. It's like,
Never
oh,
in the present moment and never in the correct environment. Wow, you're screwed.
I know, right? It's like I never felt comfortable. Never. I always felt like I had to prove myself somehow. But so I have a manifestor mom and a generator dad. And so it's interesting unpacking that. And they were very in their not self when I was growing up. My dad's a pilot. He wasn't around much because he was flying. My brother's also a generator. So there's just all of this energy happening around me. And I'm the only projector type. And I didn't feel like anybody got me. So, yeah. So it's just interesting looking back. I feel like everything was not correct. And so it's been more getting into understanding and honoring that, like when I don't feel good, and not thinking something's wrong with me, which is what I always would do, like you said before, like, oh well, obviously something's wrong with me because I don't feel good here, everybody else is fine.
Yes. And now you can look back and say, actually, no, it wasn't me. Well, it is you, but it is something that that you are experiencing. I think that's one of the things that Eckhart got started like implanting into my brain, but then human design really solidified, which is every single human being on this earth is having a different experience than every other human being on this earth. There is not one person that is having the same experience as another person. And even you and I, we're sitting on this podcast, we're talking, but you're having a different experience than me. And I think that that allows for so much freedom.
Yes.
It's like everybody's different. Isn't that wonderful? As opposed to everybody needs to be the same. I guess homogenization is one of the words that Rod uses a lot. And and I've always felt this about other human beings. I've always felt like the most interesting part of the human being is in the nuance. So when I would meet someone and they would be like, oh, I work here and I do that and I do that. And, they would come back with their drink and they would have a lime in their drink. And I would say, why do you choose lime over lemon? Like, what is it about the lime that you prefer to the lemon? And this is how my brain works. I mean, this is how I'm interested in other people. And you can feel people like to talk about their nuances, you know what I mean? Because it's not something they get to do a lot. So I think that when people talk to me and you, I think they get to experience, and I tell myself now, I was always looking to experience it myself through the other person. I was always looking for myself in the other person, but now I know that I get to, that if invited, that people can feel themselves the way I feel them. They can see them the way I see them, which is always way better than they see themselves. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's always an improvement to what they're thinking, I could assure you. And so that is, it's all of those things. It's like what you thought was your Achilles heel is really your superpower. What you thought made you unlovable and unworthy is really why you're here. And for everybody that's different. And I think that for people like me and you, I completely shifted my life. I left corporate America, and a lot of people would say, well, why did you do that? And it's like, I would say I really didn't have a choice. I mean, this feels much more like a calling than anything else. And our talent is we get to help other people feel better. And I say to people, you don't need to leave your job and change your whole life to feel better like I did. It can be one small thing. It could be one small shift in the story. But that's the thing, it all comes down to the story that people live in, which you mentioned with your single moms group. It's like you can see the story, and you can empathize with the story. I mean, the story is real for them, and it's incredibly heavy. I mean, can't you feel when you're talking to people and they're telling you, you think, I don't like to watch any shows that make me sad. I don't like any of it.
Yeah. I like you. It's got to be some light comedy.
Yes, I
Except
want to laugh.
I went on a binge of Handmaid's Tale, which is way better than I usually do, but I was loving it. That's the only one. Everything else, it's like, yeah, I rewatch Gilmore Girls or 30 Rock or something. Yeah.
Yes, something to make you kind of laugh. Because I think that even in those experiences with fictional, anything that's in front of us, we can become absorbed by it. And so
that's why I don't watch the news.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself when you're talking to someone or even watching TV and listening to a character, like, do you start seeing their human design or thinking like, oh, they're totally a projector or something? Do you do that?
There's a couple people that I think one day, if you have the opportunity, you must ask this person what their birth date is, because again, there's so many people from my past that I'm like, I bet he's a manifester. Like, and you just wonder, you're like, oh, it's so exciting.
I know. I was reading a book and it had a quote from a psychologist who lived in like the 1800s. And immediately I was like, this guy had an undefined G center, or maybe even open. And so I go and I do some hacking, open G center, just from one quote. It's like, I got to know. It fascinates me.
Yeah. And I say that you talk about your professor side, and to me it feels like you have an ability, you have all this information, right, that and then just from people's words, like you didn't even hear it, you read it.
Oh my gosh, my phone goes on do not disturb, but not my computer, so sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So you read the words of this guy, you read them, true?
Yes.
And you could feel into the words. I think maybe that's every mental projector, but I can just close my eyes and listen to someone and the way they say things and the words that they choose. Like for you, it's really not the way they say them, it's the words that they choose.
Yes. Yes. It's the words they choose. I mean, it's a little the way they say it. There's always the energetic thing going on
Yeah.
under the surface, even before I realized I was doing that. Oh, yeah.
But with the gentleman online, he is not alive anymore, true?
True. Yeah. He was born in the late 1800s, I
Yeah.
believe. And so, and yeah, I can't even remember his name right now. But yeah, I was like, I just have to know. I'm not going to be satisfied until I know. And it was fun looking that up because the quote was, a person's behavior is directly affected by their environment. And I'm like,
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes sense that he would have that.
yeah.
He felt that way. Define, don't feel that way, but he certainly did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that's the other thing that I love about human design with the individualization of it, because before when I was trying to figure stuff out, it's like I would cling to some quote, which that one would be very correct for me, but it's not totally correct for everybody, right? They might have related to it some if they had a defined G, but an undefined solar plexus. But that's the thing, is that I can just look at all of these different things and I realize, or all these different pieces of advice, all these books and wisdom, and I love it, but I don't have to take it all. I can see their perspective in it and I can acknowledge how great that is. And I don't have to make myself feel bad, which I would do before, like, well, if this doesn't resonate with me, does that mean I'm wrong or I'm doing something?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, I just, like, maybe that person's a generator, that's helped relieve a lot too. I'll look at some people online who have all of these following or like doing these things. And then I realize, you know what, this person has Manny Gen energy. I bet they're Manny Gen. And I'm not. I keep trying to be, but I'm not. So I'm gonna let it go.
Yeah, it's permission to take what resonates and leave what doesn't.
Yes. Oh my gosh, because then all the pressure too when starting a business of like, okay, well, you've got to post 4 times a day and you have to do it every day. And you have to have a call to action on at least 2/3 of your posts. Like, maybe don't do it on all of them because you don't want to wear people out, but you got to have a call to action, and then you got to go on stories, and then and now I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna post when I'm ready to post. The end.
Mm-hmm. And the experiment is, what does that shift? And it sounds to me like the way that what could shift is the intention, right? So it all comes down to what our intention is in every moment of our human experience. And so when you were posting on Instagram and it felt like a lot of efforting and it felt like a lot of energy and you didn't want to do it, you put out your work, and it's interesting, it could be the same content, but when you're recording it, when you're posting it, how will that impact how it is received? I wonder. To me, that seems like what the experiment is now.
Yes, that's huge because there was a little bit of anxiety underneath too, of like, okay, well, I've got to post it correctly. And of course, at the time I knew about energy too. So I'm like, okay, well, I've got to manage my energy, like get into a good place, but then I got to post correctly. And then my coach said I need to do this. So I need to add that in there. And there's just all this like mental gymnastics happening. And I finally realized just very recently, looking back, like, okay, out of all of that time, I never once got a client from an Instagram post. And I thought, well, of course, because I was selling as a projector. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
wants to hear that. That's so like, and I could feel that. And so I think that's the energetic of it, is that I was doing it because I thought I was supposed to,
Mm-hmm.
because this is what business owners do. And this is how I run a business, and I need to feed my kids. And that's just not authentic to the way my energy is, especially as a mental projector. You add the projectorness and like square it. And if I'm uninvitedly telling people to buy stuff from me, like, I've got wisdom, come get more of it and pay me for it. No, are you kidding me?
Right. It feels so terrible even when you say it. I'm like, oh,
I know you like
I don't want
literally,
to do that.
you're like, uh, yeah.
Yeah.
So it made so much sense when I thought back, like, okay, yes. And I personally, I've seen people delete old stuff. I'm leaving it because I feel like let's learn from the process. And maybe one day I can tell somebody else who's running a business, like, go look at my old post. How does it feel when you're reading my stuff?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and then how does it feel after this switch? See what it is. And you gotta figure out your own voice.
Right. And it's that three line of, we're not, it's interesting because we're like, I'm a recovering perfectionist, but the way that my life is energetically designed is to be imperfect. And it's in that imperfection that I can show up in service to other people. But it's
Mm.
only through those, through that three line, which is just so interesting. And I don't have any interest in pretending in any part of my life anymore. I think I was really good at pretending. And
Mhm.
in fact, I would have said it was like one of my superpowers, that it like got me where I wanted to go. And now I'm like, and it really, it's not even that different. The way that I interact with the world is that intention. Like, I'm not doing that anymore. This is who
Mhm.
I am. If you like me, great. If you don't like me, that's fine too. You know what I mean? There's plenty of human beings in this world. And when you say cleaning up your Instagram, to me, that feels like, when people do that, like, what is their intention behind it? Is it to like erase that part? Or I don't know. I'm kind of like, maybe one day I'll delete old stuff, but it isn't, I don't think that like there's anything outside of me that's going to like impact who I am internally. So it's sort of like, it's just a lot of work to delete it. So let's just leave it there.
Yeah, pretty much. It seems like third line wisdom, like you said. Like, here
Yeah.
it's just documented for you.
Right.
Check it out. It's a little embarrassing. If we could just not go into detail about some things, that'd be great. But it's the three line wisdom.
Yeah. It's the three line wisdom.
And that perfectionist part I relate to so much because I was that same way. Like, I wanted to do everything perfect. I thought there was a right way and a wrong way. And I would get very stressed if I did it wrong. And then, gosh, that three line gives me so much grace to just live. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Okay. Well, I feel like I could talk to you for like 5 days straight.
Me too. We can just move from topic to topic to topic to topic.
Yes, yes. We'll we'll just maybe have to have a mental projector series or something. Because I'm feeling pretty complete about this session here. How are you feeling? Is there anything else that's coming to you that wants to be shared?
No, I just want to say to all of the mental projectors who find this podcast that you are not alone and there's nothing wrong with you. And to use social media in a way that serves you and find people like me and Rebecca who
Mhm.
are having more similar experiences to you than maybe the people around you. And that might help ground you into this new reality that you are embarking on.
Yes. Oh, that was so beautifully said. Thank you. Yes, I love that you are not alone. And any mental projector, yeah, reach out to us, say hi, because it's an interesting journey.
Yes. And the I think of it as the rise of the projectors, right? According to Ra.
Mhm.
And I can kind of see that a little bit. I can see how the world is like, or feel probably how it's shifting in that way, and how the projectors and our knowingness will be useful, as opposed to all the doing and 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 the doing.
Yes.
I think I said this to you before, I tell myself the story I live in is that we're sort of ahead of the energetic shift
Mhm.
of humanity. And so that will allow us to show up in support of all the other humans who are, eventually going to experience this same shift.
Yes. Yes. And I love that perspective. And yeah, just all the wisdom, like you said, that's coming through. It's so fascinating to me. Especially with the pandemic that happened, and then people realizing, oh, I don't have to go burn myself out at a corporate job. And they're starting to change how that looks. And I feel like this younger generation is coming up. Sometimes I'll watch TikToks or I'll hear people speak. And I'm like, they are so wise. Like they're calling out misogyny, they're calling out sexism, they're calling out all this stuff, this big stuff. And I'm unpacking so many stories from the past because of this. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's projector wisdom right there. Like, hey, look at this thing that's happening. That's kind of dumb. Why are we doing this? Here's another way. So yeah, it's all rising up. These next few years are going to be fascinating.
Yes, I am observing, intently observing from my lair.
Same. I love watching it unfold. And I work with high school kids now. I just told one the other day, I'm like, I'm so excited to watch y'all grow up.
Mhm.
I'm so curious what y'all are going to do.
Someone told me once that children now process trauma differently than we do, than our generations do. And I don't know exactly what that meant, but I feel its accuracy in the ways that we look at what the children have experienced so far in their human life. Like the children who were born after COVID, like they'll never know life without COVID. I always thought about that with like September 11th, like children who like they only know a world, like the children who are even our children were born in such a different, like I think, frequency. And I think when the history books are written, that people like me and you, we will be straddling that shift in consciousness. Do you know what I mean? That we can see in the younger generation, they're more connected to it maybe than we are. But we're like, like a straddling. I feel like we're straddling.
Yes, I feel that too, because I can look back at, you know, our parents' generation and even their parents and
Yeah.
see why they showed up in the way they did. I mean, there was so much trauma happening and just all this stuff. Like you said in the very beginning, how they like wrestled you into the stroller because it was the 70s. Yeah, the 70s and 80s were weird times, man. But you think about the way our parents parented, but then think about how they grew up in such a time. Like it's just, yeah, it's fascinating looking back and putting all the pieces together and realizing, okay, well, we had this system in place because that's what helped us survive then, but it's just not working anymore. And look at these young people coming in with all these new ideas and new perspectives, and it's so cool because
Mhm.
the system's got to shift. It's got to change. It's got to go away. It's not healthy for anybody who's built on trauma. So I haven't heard that, but I love that they're processing trauma in a different way.
Yeah, because I think about it with my own kids. You try to create a trauma-free environment, and with COVID, I think there's a lot of fear being pumped into humanity, and I think I don't want my children to feel that fear, and then I remind myself that if you don't feel it, then they will be less inclined to also. You know what I mean? It's all about what you're experiencing, and then it allows to then sort of impact other people's experiences. But then the fact that they don't, like if it's true that they don't experience trauma in the same way, then I think, okay, that makes me feel even better. Like that thought serves me, so I am choosing to believe that.
I will take that one. Thank you.
Yes, good.
Yes, yes. Well, and I'm sure just with the amount of work that you've done, like that helps your kids process stuff so much. Because I see it in mine where there's times, one time we were watching a show and there's some drama happening, like some funny drama. And my oldest son looked at me, he's like, TV is so much different with you as a mom. Like these guys are just making up so many stories. It could be solved so easily. And he's 17. So I'm like, okay, I've done my job. You're good.
Yes. Bravo. Well done.
They're so funny. Okay, well, thank you so much, Bridget. Tell us real quick what programs you got going on, how we can find you.
Sure.
Yeah, what's going on there?
I am on all the regular spots. I have a website, bridgetcooper.com, and on Instagram, also the Bridget Cooper. I have a Facebook site called Dear Bridget, where you can submit a question and I will answer your question in Dear Abby style, with the intention of having you feel better with whatever problem is plaguing you. And I also offer coaching programs, and I do what's called a clarity call, which is usually with coaching, it's a little more of a commitment, but the clarity call allows people to kind of call me, talk to me about one thing that's going on in their brain, you know, a topic, children, like anything in their life. And they get to leave with a clarity, you know, from inside, that I have 100% efficacy rate on those too. So check them out.
That's amazing. What a
Yeah.
great gift. I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much. It's so much fun diving into the depths with you.
Yes. Thank you so much.
And I will talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.